So, Kate, I have to tell you a funny story. I sent a text message to someone on my team and I said, our fangirl, the girl we fan over all the time, she's going to be on the podcast. And guess what? She knew right away that I was talking about the one and only Kate Northrup. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
The two of us have copywriting fan love for you. We love the way you write. We love I call them cliffhangers, the subject lines and the way that you write things. You have a real gift. I know that's not your only gift, but I know that a lot of people, if you're listening and you want to get better at copywriting, just to, subscribe to Kate's mailing list and learn from her brilliance, because you are a really gifted writer.
That means so much to me, Lisa. Thank you.
And thank you for saying yes to being a guest on the show today. I'm thrilled to be having this conversation with you.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. This season is all about money. And I remember many, many, many years ago in Nova Scotia, I bought this book called Money, a Love Story. And I loved reading through that book, and I loved how honest you were about your, beginnings with money. And I'd love to just start by asking you, A, what prompted you to write that book? And B, what's changed since you wrote that book?
Well, that book came out in 2013 and I wrote it in 2012. So it's been 11 years. I have since become a mother, become a homeowner, gotten married, and really became an adult. And so I'm really proud of Money, a Love Story. And I wrote it because I got myself into a boatload of debt in my early 20s. I had profound financial avoidance and unconsciousness. And then through a series of unconventional steps, I paid off that debt in a matter of 6 months and doubled my savings and doubled my income that year. And it was a dramatic year of growth. And it wasn't because I got a side hustle. It wasn't because I stopped buying lattes. It wasn't particularly, even though wonderful if that's a choice, but it wasn't following traditional personal finance wisdom. Mm-hmm. And what happened is, I was teaching these workshops called Women and Wealth in my kind of late 20s. And I ended up getting invited to this thing at Hay House, which was sort of like the next generation voices thing. And they just asked me to write a book. And I kind of gave them a bunch of ideas. And Reed Tracy, the CEO, was like, do the money one. And I mean, I wish there was a better book story, but that is actually what happened. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll do this. And then it turned out I really like writing books.
It's great. And I love reading books about money. I had the same really terrible financial situation in my early 20s. I think that high schools do every student a disservice by not explaining to you what credit card debt really is and how much it really costs you. And
how much it really costs you. Yes.
Yeah. And the difference between, consumer debt versus debt that helps you make money. And I learned a lot of lessons in my 20s. So I think I really resonated and related with that book when I read it, because I went through a very similar experience. I didn't, come across a windfall in a 6-month period, but I did get a job that was a promotion for me where I negotiated a 50% increase in pay. And I went to the bank and I had them redirect all of my increased earnings to my debt. And I paid my debt off a couple of years early. So, definitely there was a lot of parallels for me.
I love that story.
I'm curious, what did you believe back then about money that you don't believe today?
What a great question. So in the past, I believed that your financial reality had nearly everything to do with your mindset, with the thoughts and beliefs that you think when it comes to money. I really thought it was, maybe 95% that. Since then, I've learned so much about two things. Number one, equity and our lack of equity, certainly in the United States. And, I don't know as much Canadian history, but they're intertwined.
Mhm.
And so lack of equity for women, lack of equity for women of color, people of color. And so I realized the shortfalls of the mindset only perspective. And then I also learned about the nervous system. And I learned that we actually can't think our way out of unconscious habits sometimes and unconscious patterns. And so the two additional pieces, really that equity piece and really wanting to talk about money from a perspective that includes, to whatever degree possible, folks of all different kinds of backgrounds, but then also really the nervous system healing piece and realizing that there are deeper layers of healing that need to be done sometimes than just change a thought. And so I think that my perspective was accurate, yet overly simplified a decade ago.
I love it. See, I am a believer, and I mean, you may not agree with this, but that's okay. I believe that a lot of our mindset issues around money are influenced by our lack of understanding of how finances actually work. And that when you sit with someone, especially if we're talking about women who own businesses, for example, and you help them to understand how to read a P&L, and you help them to understand what their pricing model should look like so that they can generate a profit, when you connect those dots for them, all of a sudden their mindset is no longer the problem. Like, it wasn't really their mindset. It was the lack of understanding the mathematical mechanics of how business and finance works. And so I'm curious to hear what you think of that. I love what you said about equity, because I think that is 100% true. And I know nothing about the nervous system. So I'm curious to hear all about that too.
Well, I think they're actually all intertwined. So I love what you said about financial literacy and financial education. It's really way easier to have a mindset of confidence when you have knowledge. And it's so true. There's a huge knowledge gap.
We have dogs. Sorry. Deliveries. We have barking
Oh,
dogs.
totally get it. Totally fine.
Yeah.
So I'll just start over on that.
Okay, perfect.
Well, I think they're actually all intertwined. So the nervous system, mindset, and financial literacy. So what you're talking about is financial knowledge and bridging the gap between what we don't know, what we know we don't know, and what we don't know we don't know, and the knowledge that's out there. And I think the financial industry does a wonderful job, and part of me thinks it's on purpose, of making finances sound complicated. The truth is, most of our finances from a business perspective, from a personal perspective, are actually incredibly simple. And it's just all this jargon that we don't know. And then as women, we're coming off of thousands of years of financial disempowerment, where we weren't, my grandmother in 1975 couldn't even take out a line of credit in her own name without my uncle co-signing with her because she was a widow.
Right.
That was so recent in the grand scheme of things. So we are having access to earning power and being in charge of our finances in a completely unprecedented way. And generationally speaking, it's so new. It's so new. Yeah. So it makes sense that there's a knowledge gap. And it makes sense that there might be this deep-seated mindset of, I'm not good at this, or this is too hard for me. But it's also super easy to overcome. And I love what you said, that a little financial knowledge, then there's no mindset issue because you just have the information. And so I'm 100% in agreement with that.
I find labels are really dangerous too. Like, I hear people say things like, oh, you have a money mindset issue. Oh, you have a scarcity mindset. Oh, you have a poverty mindset. And the scary thing is that sometimes women take that on. They
Right.
take those labels and they stick to them like, oh my God, I have a bad money mindset. Whereas maybe that's not the whole thing. And so I love, I love talking about money because I grew up in a generation where you're not supposed to talk about money. You're not supposed to talk about how much money you make. You're not supposed to talk about how much money you have in the bank. And so it's like one of these things that was taboo to talk about. And I even find sometimes myself feeling uncomfortable telling someone that I've built 3 businesses that do over 7 figures because it is a rarity. But it's so important for women to share these stories so that other women can learn what is possible for them too.
It is, which actually reconnects to the nervous system. So, what's really interesting is our nervous systems are a series of nerves, and it's all connected to the brain that make these micro adjustments to keep us alive. Thank goodness for the nervous system. It's why we don't fall off our chairs. It's why all sorts of things, right? So, it's wonderful. And because the nervous system is largely unconscious, it has these set points for where it wants to keep us in terms of our comfort zone, because our comfort zone is set based on mostly our childhood experiences. And what feels comfortable, what feels familiar feels comfortable. And so when it comes to money, if we grew up in a situation or a culture in which it was not safe to be a wealthy, powerful woman,
Mhm.
which I don't know really very many people who grew up in a culture where it is safe to be a wealthy, powerful woman, we will have a thermostat set point of what our familiarity comfort zone is. But here's what's so cool. There's so many amazing things that the nervous system will do. This is not a label in any way, because our nervous systems, like our minds, are incredibly plastic. And so meaning changeable. And
Mhm.
so when I hang out with someone like you who has built multiple 7-figure businesses, that's not something I've personally built. I've only done one, and
Mhm.
we all have our different experiences. And so we can have an experience of, because I know you, because I'm in conversation with you, and really anyone listening as well, we can choose to come at these sorts of expansive conversations from a perspective of, I'm now co-regulating, meaning my nervous system is now recognizing your nervous system as sort of a connected, intertwined human experience. And it can see, oh, that was possible over there. And
Mhm.
because you and I have, we have things in common and we can recognize those things, that's an experience. You have an experience of calm and safety and mastery when it comes to building multiple 7-figure businesses. And then my nervous system can then expand its thermostat through co-regulation to then say like, oh, maybe my thermostat level could expand what's possible because I've been in relationship with someone else who has had that experience, who I can relate to, which is why
Mhm.
it is so important for women to talk about financial success, because it
Yes.
changes it for everyone. It makes it more possible for other women.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's interesting that you say that because I had texted one of my clients when I was kind of riffing on ideas for this season. And I said to her, what else should I talk about? And she said, you should talk about becoming mortgage free. She said, because when I started to work with you and you told me that you became mortgage free in your early 40s, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know anybody. I had not met one other person who was mortgage free. And then this client of mine and her husband, get this, they decided they wanted to become mortgage free too. And so literally by 30, they accomplished that goal.
That's so
So that's
cool.
exactly what you're talking about, though. It's like, it's the, you call it the regulation. I call it, hey, if she can do it, I can do it. And it's kind of
Totally.
the same thing, but it's seeing those things that are possible for other people. I remember, years ago, um, reading something or watching a video that Frank Kern did. And I remember him and his, gruff, this was like back when he was surfer dude, Frank Kern, and, you're not a millionaire unless you have $1 million in the bank. And I was like, people do that? People have $1 million in the bank? Oh, that's a thing. I want to do that. And so I love the conversation and the possibilities that we see when we're free to talk about things like this.
Yes. Yes. That is so true. And just you being an example of, so there is something called we both know Dr. Valerie Rain, who wrote Patriarchy, Stress Disorder. It's a wonderful book if you want to understand the nervous system and sort of the way our bodies unconsciously create lived patterns. And one of the things she taught me about is something called collective trauma. And so we have all these different traumas, big T traumas, little T traumas, collective traumas, and ancestral traumas. But collective trauma, when we understand it, we can actually use the understanding of it for the positive. And so collective trauma is, I see you as another woman out there, and maybe something is happening that feels scary to me. That registers in my system as, now I'm unsafe too. On the flip side, I see you out there having no mortgage, or, that until this conversation, that really wasn't on my radar. I mean, I do know people who have no mortgage, but like, it didn't occur to me as a goal. So here we are. That's so cool.
I love that. I love that because
so great. Like, oh, cool. That's amazing.
But my thinking on that, just to put it into perspective, is when you don't have a mortgage, you don't have to worry about paying for your house. And when you're self-employed, that house appreciates in value and becomes an asset that you can then use the equity to invest in other things. And, or when you don't want to work anymore, you can sell that asset and it's going to be worth a lot of money because it appreciates in value over time.
Yes. No, it's so great. I love it. Okay. So that, on the flip side of that collective trauma, is sort of collective healing. And back to that same, it's just another example of saying, like, if she can do it, so can I. And that can be a mindset choice. And I believe it actually can heal our nervous systems and our unconscious more quickly when we make the mindset choice to look outside ourselves and say, if they can do it, so can I. And then our body recognizes that to be true. And then it happens faster for us than it would if we weren't choosing that thought.
So there are going to be people here listening that think, oh, great, easy for you to say. You two both have, successful businesses. You two both have, money. And I'm trying to get my business off the ground. I'm in a, maybe I'm in a dead end job, or maybe I've just started my business and I'm not making a lot of money yet. And I've got all kinds of debt. What do you advise people as some of the initial things that they can do to change the cycle, to really break the cycle of poverty that they may have experienced in their life? Because I know growing up, I just thought you bought things on credit cards because that's what I saw my mom do. I didn't understand. I just thought, oh, minimum payment, that's what you do. You run things up on a credit card and you pay the minimum payment. I still remember when we remortgaged one of our homes, the mortgage broker gave us a statement that showed the principal and interest over the next X number of years. And I was crazy enough to add up the interest payments. And I had a holy shit moment. We're going to pay that much for this house. That was literally one of the defining moments where I decided we need to be more, I don't want to spend that much on this house. So where do people start when it feels impossible?
Okay. So number one, I want to congratulate anyone listening in and encourage you to listen into every single episode with Lisa during this season about money, because the act of exposing yourself to a different kind of money conversation than the ones you've been around is going to change you. Just that. Like you will find yourself thinking in a new way, taking new action, simply because you're exposing yourself to a new kind of conversation. So just keep doing what you're doing. Number one, sometimes it's really nice to know that you're already doing the right thing.
That's true.
All right. So you're already doing great. Number two is decide to build a different kind of relationship with your money. So this perspective that I'm about to share can be incredibly eye-opening. if we wanted to have a better relationship with our spouse and we constantly were worried about if our spouse was going to leave us, talking about how our spouse wasn't enough, in constant anxiety about losing our spouse, or talking about how they were falling short and we didn't look them in the eye when they came home, and we didn't pay any attention to them, and we didn't spend any time with them, and we didn't do date nights, and we didn't, right? Like, how would that marriage be?
It'd be
Right?
terrible.
It would be a terrible marriage. Money is no different. We think like, oh, I want to have all this money and I want to have a healthy relationship with money and I want my financial life to be good. And yet we always talk about how there's not enough. And we're stuck in cycles about how it's not going to be there, and we complain about it, and we don't pay attention to it. Right? We put our statements in a drawer and we never open them, and we don't pay our quarterly taxes, or we don't, all of these things. Right? We do avoidant behavior, we do fearful behavior, we do all, and we don't take the time to invest in basic financial literacy, which, by the
Right.
way, anyone can figure it out. Like, money is not complicated. And so decide and start to think about your money as a relationship, and start to pay attention to it in loving ways, in the same way you would invest in a romantic relationship. Because when you invest in your money like you would a romantic relationship, you capitalize on the fact that then it becomes more fun. And also, and we tend to do things that are fun. So the more you pay attention to your money, the better your financial situation will be, because you catch stuff where you're wasting money or could save some or could make more. You just, what we put our attention on grows, period, end of story. And when you do that from a loving perspective, you just add all this yummy, energetic fertilizer to it. And it really becomes a gift that keeps on giving. So what's one practical action step you can do? Check your bank account balance every morning. At the same time as you do that, though, or right before, tap into some kind of feeling of gratitude. So maybe you're going to snuggle with your dog. Maybe you're going to look outside your window and see cherry blossoms blooming on a tree outside your window. Maybe you're going to listen to a bird song, through the screen door. Maybe you're going to sip on your coffee and just think like, oh my God, I love coffee. Whatever it's going to be, get yourself in a state of expansion, in a state of gratitude, and then check your bank account balance. And just that simple act, doesn't matter if your bank account balance is not what you want it to be, you are repatterning your brain and your nervous system to match, to combine the feeling of goodness and safety with paying attention to money. And that will rewire your actions.
The other thing I do, and I recommend people do, is treat your money with respect, which means, this sounds corny, Kate, you're going to probably laugh.
I love all corny things.
Put all of your bills together in the right denominations with the heads facing the right way.
I do that.
Don't just cram them into your wallet. Organize your money neatly and learn that you have the power to generate money. So anytime someone says to me, I don't know how to make more money, I always challenge them to go play on Facebook Marketplace, because we all have stuff in our house that we don't need, that we don't use, that we don't want. And instead of just giving it away or throwing it away, put it on Facebook Marketplace and learn how to generate money from what you already have. And then the best part, especially for women, learn how to negotiate. Facebook Marketplace, you don't know these people. So it can literally be your playground to negotiate with someone else to get the money that you want for whatever the thing is that you're selling. You have nothing to lose. You're not going to be any worse off.
It's great practice.
There is only an upside to actually selling something, because I feel like when you know how to generate money loses its power, and now you have power.
Yes.
That to me is the greatest change in the relationship that you can have with money.
Yeah, because that puts you in a state of abundance where literally you are actually truly experiencing that there's always more where that came from.
Mhm.
Because without knowing that we have access to more resources whenever we want them, we will be caught in that loop of lack. But I love the Facebook Marketplace example.
Mhm.
And I recommend another exercise, which I think you'll like, Lisa, is walk through your day and look at everything around you through the eyes of money. So when you're going into the coffee shop, think through every single transaction that is part of that sense of that spot. Okay. So through the eyes of money, when you go to the coffee shop, you notice, oh, I'm opening a door right now. Somebody had to make the glass. Somebody then had to buy the glass. Then the people who make the doors bought the glass. Somebody got paid to install the glass into the door. Then somebody else got paid to install the door. The people who own the building bought the door and then paid somebody to do that. Then there's the flooring. Somebody had to contract the person to put in the flooring. Then there's the barista. Then there's the people who grew the coffee beans. Then there's the people who distributed the coffee beans. Then there's the people who are making the coffee. Then there's the people who are paying rent to the building. Then there's the person who owns the business. Then there's the coffee sleeves. Somebody had to make those. Somebody had to distribute those. Somebody paid wholesale. It's a whole, like when you start
Right.
thinking through every transaction that you are in proximity to every day, you really begin to realize there is money everywhere. And all we need to do is put ourselves in the flow that's
Mhm.
happening all around us 24/7. And we don't have to be in the flow of every single transaction. That's not the goal. But when we start to see life through the eyes of financial flow, we do really begin to understand, oh, it's everywhere and I can
Mhm.
always get more.
Mhm. What are your thoughts on money shame? Because
Mm,
I've seen money shame happen in different ways. When you don't have money, there's a certain amount of shame that people feel because
yep.
they feel like, it's their fault. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it
Mhm.
isn't. And then there are times when you do have money and you feel guilt or maybe even shame. I remember when I bought my first Louis Vuitton bag. It was a milestone moment for me. And it was when I had quit my corporate job to start a business. I bought it to symbolize this new beginning. And I told my mom about this bag, and I was at my mom's house. And of course, I grew up very poor. And my cousin and my aunt were at my mom's house. And my mom was like, "Oh my God, do you know how much this child of mine paid for that bag?" I wanted to crawl under the couch. I felt ashamed of myself for giving myself permission to buy that bag.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that? Because I see it happen. It's
Mm.
like one of these weird things. It's like when you don't have it, you feel ashamed of your financial situation. And when you do have it, you feel like there's this weird feeling that comes along with it too.
I'm so glad you asked this question. This goes back to our sense of belonging. And often, unfortunately, in community, we create a sense of belonging through collective struggle.
Mm.
And so, in that moment with your mom and your aunt and your cousin, that was a tall poppy moment. That was a crabs in the bucket moment. That was a you being perceived as leaving behind your family of origin and your mom pulling you back in so that she could maintain a sense of connection, right? Now I'm interpreting it, but that could
Mhm.
be one interpretation of what was happening. And in order for you to feel that sense of belonging and connection, you did feel ashamed because there is
Right.
that feeling of like, these are my people.
I cut my own poppy.
Exactly. Yeah. You cut your own poppy, right? Like there's always a choice in those moments. I'll never forget. So I grew up in a sort of different situation. Both of my parents were doctors and I had an above average household income for where I
Mhm.
grew up. And I remember many circumstances feeling ashamed or being shamed for being an affluent family. And
Mhm.
so it's just an interesting like shadow, two sides of the same coin. It's an unconscious base level thing that we do to each other, which is I want to feel connected to you. And therefore, I want to bring you to the level I'm experiencing. And the way I'm going to connect with you, if you're having more than me or if you're having less than me, I want to bring you to my level. So I'm going to make you feel bad one way or the other. And then of course we learn that behavior. So then we do it to ourselves,
Mm.
which is
Right.
why people don't talk about money, because
Right.
you get shamed if you have too much, you get shamed if you have too little. There's guilt on both sides. And then there's this underlying belief that there's not enough to go around. And so therefore, if you're spending money on a Louis Vuitton bag, somehow you've then taken from someone else who needs it more, which
Mhm.
by the way, economically speaking, is simply inaccurate. When we do the research, we actually find that there are enough resources for us to all live a good life. Now, are we all going to, is there enough for us all to be billionaires? I don't know. We could have that conversation, but that's not the conversation we're having today. We are having
Did you say the B word?
I did. I don't know. I don't know about the rocket ships and word, but I'm just saying, because I know people will think like, well, we can't all be Elon Musk or, who's he, what's it, like jetting off it to the moon. Fine. I don't want to do that anyway, but
Yeah, me either.
but there's enough resources for us to have great housing, enough healthy food, fresh air, clean water, like the things that we actually need to thrive. There's more than enough for everyone. So therefore, any amount of shaming or blaming or guilt is not rooted in truth. It's just rooted in an unconscious tendency to think that we have to buy our sense of belonging through shrinking.
Mhm.
And so that's why conversations like this are so important, why organizations like the Trust where we met are so important, where women can connect, or any kind of organization. It does, like anytime that you are connecting with other people through a shared common goal of expansion and well-being and growth, that's going to be really helpful for the parts that feel ashamed or guilty about having more or having less. And the other
Mhm.
thing that's really important to remember in those moments is that our net worth is completely unrelated to our inherent worth. Our
Yes.
inherent worth is infinite. It has nothing to do with how much money is in the bank. And people
Mhm.
with more money are not more worthy, and people with less money are not more worthy. We are all equally, inherently, infinitely worthy. And money is just made up. It is completely invented. It doesn't actually exist. It's just a system that all the humans have decided to play into. And so we just need to remember the reality. It's just a freaking game.
Mhm.
And like, yeah, we live in capitalism. So if you want to participate, you got to play the game, but we need to remember it's a game.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very true. Um, you distracted me. I was so enthralled listening to what you were saying, and there was a question I was going to ask you, and now it's totally skipped my mind. Um, I know what it was. I don't know if you were there or not, but a few years ago at the Trust, there we were having lunch outside in Miami, and this young girl wanted to know what was going on over there. And someone told her, oh, these women all are, they own 7 and 8 figure businesses. And she came over to the area, and someone, ended up talking to her, and she was there because she wanted to see what women like that looked like. And it really struck me as just such an incredible thing, because it made me realize that instead of trying to hide wealth and hide money success, we really do need to share it to empower other women to see what is possible. And I think it is important that we talk about our backstory. I mean, you grew up in a wealthier than average family, but yet you had your own money struggles. I grew up, with a single mom who probably was at the poverty line, and I still had my own money struggle. but I also made changes in my life and don't live the same life that I grew up in. And I think that those stories are just so powerful and important for other people to see. It's not the people out there that are successful with money didn't always just have it handed to them. So there's so much that can be learned through the sharing.
I think there's so much that can be learned through the sharing. And I love what you said, that no matter what situation we grew up in, whether it was a situation of living close to the poverty line, or whether it was a situation of addiction or abuse or any
Mhm.
kind, like unconsciousness, or any kind of situation that just didn't feel good, we actually can create something new. And you are such a beautiful example of that. Like, so many of us are beautiful examples that we don't have to
Mhm.
carry on the same legacy. We can choose parts that we do want to carry on, because all of us have wonderful gifts from our past, but also then we can choose what new legacies we want to live into, financially or otherwise, because there's so many things around mental health, around
Mhm.
substances, around all kinds of, lack of emotional intelligence, all sorts of things. And so it is important to talk about. And I love that story of the girl coming in to say, like, I want to see what it looks like. And what's really important to know is it looks like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It looks
Yeah.
really different. And anybody listening could find an example of someone they can relate to in a certain way who has what they want. And that's one of my most favorite techniques for overcoming a limiting belief, is to go on a research project where I gather examples of people who I relate to, who have what I want and who
Yes.
prove my limiting belief wrong. So many years ago, I wanted to meet my husband, and I wanted to have a really great relationship at the same time as having financial abundance. And it just so happens to be in my family story, when my mom's career started taking off, my parents got divorced. So I had this limiting belief that I could either have a really great career or I could have great romantic love. And I just decided, that belief is not serving me. I'm going to go out and find examples of women
Mhm.
I relate to who have amazing romantic partnerships and are just thriving in their careers. And I started following them on social media. I started reading their books. I started attending their workshops. And not long after that little research project, I met my husband.
That's awesome. I love that. Go find someone who has what you want or what you aspire to have in your life. And, the other thing, Kate, that I think is so powerful is the journey the journey changes you. So if I look back at the woman I was in my 20s and I look at how I treated money and I look at the amount of debt that I accumulated, I'm not that woman anymore. And so who you are right now in your financial situation is not who you are capable of becoming. And it's the journey that you walk to get to where you want to be that is what will change who you are as an individual.
I love
So, talk to me. I know you have a program called Relaxed Money. I love the name of the program because, we all need to just chill out and relax when it comes to money. Talk to me a little bit about that program and why you started that program and what it's all about.
You know what? Now that you're asking me this question, I'm realizing the reason I named the program that was out of a conversation I had with a group of high earning women, where they were all sharing with me that they were struggling with financial anxiety. And I thought to myself, financial fear and anxiety. And I thought to myself, if the highest earning women I know are still struggling with financial anxiety and fear, then we're missing the mark here. And I thought, making more money is not going to solve the problem. If it
Yeah.
were, these women would not be experiencing this. Now, if you are struggling with food insecurity and housing insecurity, for sure, making more money is definitely going to solve those problems. So I am not saying money isn't the solution to some problems. It totally is. After a certain amount, though, which is roughly $75,000 US equivalent in annual income, money does not make us any significantly happier, for sure, the data shows. And I would also posit to say that money doesn't make us feel more secure either. So Doesn't mean it doesn't make you more secure, but feeling more secure is different, right? I just want to highlight
Yeah.
that. So what relaxed money is about is it is melding not only practical financial management, because sometimes, as you said, it just comes down to financial literacy and learning some
Mhm.
basics and getting some financial systems in place. Because if you have a leaky bucket, going to the faucet and increasing the rate at which the water is coming out is not going to help you gather any more water in your bucket. It's just going to keep
Mhm.
leaking out. So first, we got to get the financial systems in place so that the bucket stops being leaky. Then you can look at, how can I make more money? How can I save more money? How can I reduce my expenses in a way that feels really abundant? And how can I shift my, not only my money mindset and my emotions around money, but, and this is the piece that is not in any other financial program that I know about, which is, how can I heal my nervous system so that this healing and these new behaviors become automatic? And
Mhm.
I don't have to be constantly trying to be vigilant with my thoughts and like vigilant with affirmations. And because, we have a lot of stuff going on. So like, wouldn't it be great if, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, I'm taking completely new financial behaviors. I'm pitching myself in a new way. I'm negotiating in a new way. I'm feeling like I'm magnetizing new clients, and it feels like it's happening automatically because I did this healing work behind the scenes. And so
Mhm.
that's really where relaxed money came from, but it's a really interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary approach, so that you're dealing with the practical, the mindset, the emotional, and the nervous system, deep unconscious level, to really make a financial change that is lasting, not just temporary.
I love that. And I love how you explained it, because I probably would have said that the emotional part, the nervous system part is loud. That's just nonsense until you explained it. And when you explained it, I totally got it, because it really does allow you to level set and see what is possible for you in a really powerful way. So I think that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So talk to me a little bit more about how people can learn more about the work that you do around money.
Yeah, absolutely. So, certainly my first book, Money, a Love Story, is a wonderful place to start. However, what I will say about that is, as you started off our conversation today, there's been a lot that has happened in the last 11 years. And so that's why I decided to do Relaxed Money, because I have all these people around who've read the book and had incredible experiences. And I was like, there's more. It's better
Time
now. And so,
for a new
yes.
book, Kate.
Yeah, it's probably time for a new book. I'm going to work on that this summer. So anyway, over on my Instagram is a great place to hang out. And I'm sure that you'll put links in the show notes too, if people want to
Yes.
connect more deeply.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I could probably talk to you all day, but I know that, we both have other things on our plate to do today. So as we wrap up, if you could share one or two pieces of advice with our listeners that you think are really important for anyone who is trying to change their relationship with money and create more wealth and feel safer in life, what would they be?
Great. So, number one, sometimes people will say, like, oh, it's really important to change your mindset and say it's possible, right? Like, it's possible for me. Like, I can have this. And while I agree, it's really helpful to get kind of like under the radar of our conscious mind by asking ourselves questions. So instead of saying like, it's possible, or I am a money magnet, or what, right? Like things like that. Again, love that stuff. However, we can make it even more powerful and kind of like disarming in a good way by asking ourselves, how could it be possible for me to make great money? How could it be possible for me? How could I be a money magnet today? What could I do to be like, how? So asking yourself the question, how, in front of any kind of money affirmation or money mindset you would like to adopt, is going to automatically activate all kinds of possibilities that you wouldn't have thought of anyway otherwise.
Mhm.
So that's going to be number one. And then number two is, do something positive about money every day. Do something positive around money every day. It could be organizing your bills, all facing the same direction, all in the denominational order. I do the same thing I swear by it. It could be cleaning out the receipts and putting them in the, in the recycling, shredding them up. It could be having a money conversation with somebody. One of the things I do is I talk to my friends about, so like, where do you learn about investing? What do you do? Like, what kind of system do you and your husband use? I ask these questions. I don't say, how much money do you make? I don't say, how much are you investing? But I ask about systems and structures and logistics because I am genuinely fascinated. And I always learn something new. I always learn something new. And so when we engage in that way, in a way that feels appropriate and feels safe, you'll be amazed at what you can learn just from the people you hang out with. Whether they make more than you, whether they make less than you, there's so much to learn and there's so much knowledge. So have a conversation about money every day in a positive way.
I love that. It actually makes me think of something that I don't know if you have seen it in the trust or not, but you should search 6-figure hobbies, because one of the conversations that we had at one of the trust meetings, I think it was Myosha, Jerisha, and I, we started talking about just weird things that we do just for fun that help you to make more money. And it turned into this big thread with people sharing things on the trust. So it's the same kind of idea, right? It's like sharing with people, like, what do you do to do this? And getting some of those ideas from people is super helpful and powerful.
And you know what? One other thing, Lisa, just in terms of this, like surrounding yourself with a positive money conversation, I did forget to mention that I am doing a 3-part free workshop called Plenty. So if you're interested in these concepts, if you're wanting to hang out around a positive money conversation, if you're wanting to kind of learn how mindset, practical financial management, and nervous system all come together and how you can activate that for yourself, then that Plenty workshop would be great. And I'm sure you can link that in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. We can do that. I love the name. See, this is why we are your copywriting fangirls, because you just have the best. You are a word nerd.
I'm a super word nerd, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation, Kate. I really appreciate you saying yes to being on the show. I appreciate everything that you've shared. I've loved our conversation about money. I've learned some new things from you, which is just awesome. I love that. I hope our listeners have gotten tremendous value from this episode. You should probably listen to it twice and take notes. And thank you, everyone, for listening to She Talks Business. And if you go to the show notes, you will find all of the links where you can learn more about Plenty, and you can learn more about Kate, and you can follow everything that she does. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.